Now we'll look at a model that will help you to identify high potential emerging leaders. We call this the LeaderID Model. First, let's return to our definition of leadership. What is leadership? Remember, leadership involves movement. Leadership means change, movement. Leaders help people move. This means fundamentally, there are two things that leaders do. They think and they act. First, they think about the future, the vision, the change, the movement. Then they take responsibility and initiative and they act on that and lead the people toward that vision. Leaders think and act. This gives us the first two parts of our model. To choose the right ones, look for those who think and act. The LeaderID model has four simple parts. These are the first two. Look for those who think, look for those who act. Remember the leadership elevator. Good character gets you on the elevator, bad character keeps you off, but how well you think and act determine how high you will go. Leadership means movement, and therefore involves thinking and acting in various specific leadership ways. Look for those who are already thinking and acting, and you'll have a much better chance of identifying the right ones. But to do this well requires observation of their lives. This is the third part of our model. There must be a community around the emerging leader who knows him or her and who can recognize their existing leadership potential. Not just that the person is faithful, they must also be thinking and acting. Here's how that happened in the book of Acts. In Acts 16, Paul came to Lystra where a disciple named Timothy lived, and the believers at Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him. And so Paul then took him along on his apostolic journey. Notice that Paul chose Timothy, and he chose him in part because of the recommendation of the local believers at Lystra and Iconium. That recommendation, of course, would have been regarding Timothy's character, but more than that. Notice that the believers at two cities were involved here. Clearly, Timothy was already functioning well in ministry responsibility in both these cities. It's not just that he was faithful. He was thinking and acting in multiple cities, and his community recognized his high leadership potential. Now, at times you won't be able to obtain reliable information from a strong community around the person. In those situations, you can test the person. Sometimes people think that it's unchristian to test someone, but it's very biblical. Here's a New Testament example. Paul wrote, "And with them we're sending our brother whom we have often tested and found earnest in many matters," in 2 Corinthians 8. Paul told the Corinthians he's sending a brother whom he has often tested and found reliable. So if you don't have reliable community evaluation of a young leader, create some tests for him or her. Put them in situations in which initiative is required and see how they do. Are they passive and wait to be told what to do? Or do they take ownership and responsibility? Do they think and act? So now we have three parts to our model. Look for those who think, look for those who act. This requires observation of their lives. And then the fourth part of our model is dependence on God. Identification of the right ones is a deeply spiritual exercise. We must depend on God. What did Jesus do for the entire night before he chose the 12? He prayed, didn't he? All night. Remember that Jesus prayed a simple prayer of blessing over the loaves and fishes and fed 5,000, a huge miracle from a single simple prayer, and yet he prayed all night before choosing the 12. That's how important it is that we rely on God to direct us to choose the right ones to invest in. We also see the spiritual aspect when Paul chose Timothy. Paul said to Timothy, "This charge I entrust to you, Timothy, my child, in accordance with the prophecies previously made about you, that by them you may wage the good warfare." So now we have the complete LeaderID model. Look for those who think, look for those who take responsibility and act. This requires observation of their lives, and in all of it, depend on God. This is a simple model, and it will help you to identify young leaders at every level of your organization or church. Now, remember, at the broadest level, there are 3 parts of leader development: identification, development, and deployment. In identification, we select the right ones to build. That's the LeaderID model. Then in the development process, we prepare them to lead. We build their lives. That's the training process itself. We've discussed that previously when we looked at the 5 C's and the 4 D's. And then finally, we deploy them as leaders with ongoing support and continued lifelong development of their lives. And we'll work on this in an upcoming course on healthy organizational culture. But the point here is identification, development, and deployment. In building leaders, we must give attention to all 3.